You ever wonder who makes sure your favorite app doesn't just crash right when you're about to, make a purchase or beat a level? Well, that's the unsung hero of the tech world, the manual software tester. Today, we're going to take a journey right into their world to see exactly how they protect all of us from digital disaster.
I mean, this is the big question, isn't it? It's really the core mission for any software tester. It's all about being that first line of defense, the detective who finds the clues and solves the mystery long before it ever becomes a problem for you and me. And just like any great expedition, you can't just wander into the wilderness without a map. That's a recipe for chaos, missed bugs, and totally blown deadlines. That's why the first, and maybe the most critical stage, is crafting the master plan. This is where you lay the entire groundwork for success.
So that big strategy gets formalized in something called a test plan. Honestly, think of it as the constitution for your entire testing effort. It becomes the single source of truth that tells everyone involved what you're doing, why you're doing it, and exactly how you're going to get it done.
And this plan, it's the central hub for everything. It defines the scope, what's in, and just as importantly, what's out. It sets the schedule, it assigns who's doing what, and it even tries to predict risks. But most importantly, it establishes these things called entry and exit criteria. That defines exactly when you can start testing, and crucially, when you can confidently say you're done.
Okay, so with the master plan in hand, it's time to assemble your toolkit. This whole phase is about creating the specific things you'll need to execute that plan with real precision.
A really key organizational tool here is the test suite. It's actually pretty simple. It's like a container, a folder, that groups related tests together. So instead of having hundreds of individual test cases just floating around, you bundle them logically. It makes running them and tracking everything so much easier.
And this example shows it perfectly. For a login screen, you don't just test if a valid login works. No way. You group all the related checks into one suite. What happens with the wrong password? Does the forgot password link actually work? Does the session time out like it's supposed to? It becomes a complete, focused package.
Yes, the classic dilemma. You've got a mountain of tests to run, but that deadline is just looming. You can't possibly test everything with the same level of intensity, so you've got to make some smart choices. You have to prioritize.
So the answer is to focus on impact and risk. I mean, think about it. If a login or a payment function fails, the business loses money, like instantly. That makes it a high priority. A minor typo or a slightly misaligned icon, that's low risk, low priority. If you get this wrong, you could spend days fixing cosmetic stuff while a show-stopping bug just sits there, waiting to be discovered.
Of course, you can't run any tests without the right fuel, and that fuel is your test data. And this isn't just random information, it's carefully crafted input designed to push the system in very specific ways, just to see how it reacts under all sorts of conditions.
And here's the secret sauce. You need both valid and invalid data. Valid data confirms the system does what it's supposed to do, the happy path. But invalid data is just as important. It tests what happens when things go wrong. Does the app just crash horribly, or does it give the user a helpful error message? A truly solid application has to handle both scenarios with grace.
All right, the planning is done, the toolkit is ready, now for the main event, execution. This is where the plan meets reality. It's where you actually sit down and put the software through its paces.
And the process is super methodical and disciplined. First, you make sure your environment is ready to go. Then, you pick your tests based on the priority we just talked about. You follow the steps precisely, word for word, and every single outcome gets recorded. Pass or fail. There's no in-between.
And right here, this is where things get really interesting. You followed the steps, you expected one thing to happen, but something else did. You've found a bug. Now what do you do?
This is where a great tester truly shines. Finding a bug is one thing, but documenting it and reporting it clearly, that's an art form. It's all about providing the development team with every single clue they need to solve the case.
You know, a professional tester doesn't just yell, "It's broken!" First, you confirm it. You run the test again, maybe even twice, to make sure it wasn't a fluke. You check your data. Only when you're absolutely certain the issue is real do you log a detailed defect report and assign it over to a developer.
Now, here's a crucial point. Not all bugs are created equal. This table breaks down the critical difference between severity and priority. See, severity is all about the technical impact, like does it crash the entire system?
But priority is about the business urgency. Understanding this is key, because you can have a high-severity bug, say a server crash on an admin page only one person ever uses, but it's low priority for the business. The opposite is also true. The real skill is knowing the difference.
So as we start to wrap up our journey here, let's zoom out for a second. How do you know you've actually tested enough? How do you make sure that no major feature has just been totally missed? Well, this is the whole concept of test coverage.
One of the absolute most powerful ways to ensure good coverage is with something called end-to-end testing. This isn't about testing one tiny little button. It's about testing a complete user journey, from the moment they open the app to the moment they achieve their goal. It mimics exactly how a real person would use it.
And this e-commerce example is just perfect. An end-to-end test confirms that the login system, the search engine, the shopping cart, the payment gateway, and the email system are all working together seamlessly. Because if any one of those steps breaks, the entire flow fails for the user.
And that brings us to what I'd call the golden rule of testing, something every great tester absolutely lives by. Your personal opinion on how something should work, it doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is what the requirements say it's supposed to do. So never assume. Always, always confirm with the official documents before you ever declare something a bug.
So I'll leave you with this final thought. Every seasoned tester has a story about the one bug they'll never forget finding. You know, the one that prevented a major disaster or saved the company a ton of money. So, what's the bug that made you realize just how critical this detective work truly is?